Welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys. Brought to you by TwoWayRadioCenter.com, a Motorola value-added reseller. The Church Safety Guys is a nonprofit organization dedicated to equipping the vigilant, those men and women who stand watch, keeping our houses of worship and places of faith safe. We believe church safety and security must be a ministry first, and have engaged servant leaders who continually strive for excellence and teams of motivated volunteers that are always training. Join us for the next hour as the Church Safety Guys unpack safety, security, leadership, and ministry operations with your hosts, Dr. James McGarvey and Mike Scully. This broadcast is also available on YouTube, your favorite podcast platforms, churchsafetyguys.com, and on the original Church Security app. Download it today. Feel free to like, subscribe, and share with your ministry.
Well, hello. Welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys. I am James, and once again, joined with the picturesque co-host, Mike.
Picturesque. I think picturesque was my afternoon. That was, I took a boat ride under the Golden Gate Bridge here in San Francisco, and as I travel and meet with different folks. So it was a chance to dart away.
I say picturesque because last week we were having issues with your camera. So
true. Good point.
We didn't. Yeah. I'm like talking to an empty screen. That was weird. I went back and I was working on that podcast for the podcast, and I was adjusting some stuff. And I listened every. What's that?
Not even an avatar. I couldn't. I couldn't get anything to work. Yep.
But it was funny because I listen every time we do a broadcast. I listen to it afterwards, probably 3 or 4 times, just to tweak the sound levels and stuff. And so it was just funny because I'm like, I can't even read your body language and your facial expressions and everything because
so you used to it.
Yeah. But otherwise, it's welcome back.
Thank you.
So if you haven't had a chance to join us in a little bit, or maybe this is your first time joining us, welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us. We do live broadcasts every Sunday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then use that throughout the week. And as always, if there's a topic or bit of content relating to church safety and security that you'd like us to chat about, you're welcome to reach out to us through our website, which is churchsafetyguys.com, or you can reach out to us through the new Church Security app. You can download that. It's entirely free, thanks to our sponsors. And if you register, which is also free, that gives you quite a bit of material to be helpful. And you can actually contact us through that as well. So it allows you to send a message. And I was thinking about it today. I never say this, but we always read every message that comes in. And most of the time what happens is I get it. And then I usually mention it to Mike or, one of the other, Jared or one of the other guys. But we do actually go through those messages. So even if we don't respond right away, sometimes we get a little bit backed up between trying to run a ministry full time when when neither one of us are full time. We both, except for our regular jobs. So it's certainly interesting. But welcome. If you're listening to this at another time on one of the podcast platforms, feel free to click like and subscribe, and that helps us out and lets us know that folks are watching and where you're watching from, and helps us continue with that content. So really good stuff. A couple of quick announcements, and then we'll bring in our guest for this broadcast. But just so you know, if you're in the Florida area, the website is actually up and open for purchasing tickets for the Florida event. That's February 24th outside of Orlando at Lakeland, Faith Baptist Church in Lakeland, Florida. And that's going to be a one-day seminar, and it will be focused on child protection. So we'll have quite a few folks that you've seen on the broadcast there, talking about what your ministry can do to protect its most valuable asset, which is the children. And I will be there. And then I think we're also going to have several law enforcement agencies talking about trafficking and whatnot, because that seems to be pretty prevalent in Florida at the moment. So what churches can do to combat that and be prepared for that. We've seen in the news, I know we've seen several churches down there already over the last year get impacted by that. So definitely something good to brush up on and get the information on. So that's available. You can go to churchsafetyconference.com or go to our website under events and conferences and do that. And I think the cost is $49.99 a person, and that includes lunch. So great cost, great deal. USCCA we've partnered with, and they're doing an awesome job at helping us keep the expense down, for sure. But other than that, I had actually a great day yesterday. Got a chance to go out and watch an individual with one of the more local companies do some church safety training, and he did a great job. And he and actually his trainers have been a fan of our broadcast, which it was cool. He was actually local, so I was able to go meet him, and they were pretty funny. They were like, "Hey, you're the guy on that on that show," and
it never gets old. Like it always feels weird. Like
it does
you
feel
talk to
weird.
people, like it feels really weird, even in like random places. Like I've had people mention it to me in an airport before, and I'm like, oh, okay. So it's really, really random. And then even at our own conferences to say, hey, will you sign my book?
Yeah.
Okay. But it's
Well,
good to not have to do all the training yourself. It's
yeah.
always nice to be able to go audit another training and not be the trainer. I
Yeah.
found that it's far and few between. Don't always get to do that with a budget for a church. A lot of times you're going as the trainer, and then you take a train the trainer course, and then you bring the training back to your team because you can't necessarily afford to send everybody. So it's always nice to get a little bit of exposure and training on your own.
Yeah, these guys, it was interesting. These guys were like trying to get me in. Like the main instructor's like, "Hey, you're welcome to join in there and do stuff too." And they were practicing a lot of it was specifically firearm stuff. It wasn't really anything else. It was designed for that. So it wasn't like, this is all of what we're going to cover. They were specifically brought in to go through firearm drills and, moving in between people and understanding some of the dynamics of, responding to like an active shooter situation and that sort of thing. So it was really good. And one of the trainers is an officer with the local police department. And it was great to meet him. He was actually involved in fact, I should reach out to him because they had a active shooter situation at one of our football stadiums. And it was actually the next town over from where I live. south side of Columbus, and he and his officers actually were in the middle of responding to it to address that. And it was a crazy story how he responded and how he applied some of what they were teaching in the class to his officers to help his officers learn. And one of the interesting things that he mentioned was, oftentimes people will default and say, well, we'll let the police handle it. Like when it comes to church safety and, cause they get training all the time. And what was interesting was he pointed out, he said, he said, we don't get training all the time. He's like, we're always out in the community doing stuff. So he said, even for us, it's nice to have a refresher and go out and try and, be reminded of how we're supposed to handle certain things that we don't use all the time. So it was a good session for sure. And I hadn't even gotten a chance to tell you, I was just on the phone probably 10 minutes before we started the broadcast with my daughter. My youngest daughter was actually out at the movie theater with a bunch of other individuals from our old church, and they started hearing gunfire, and so her and everybody else evacuated the theaters. They ran to the car, they left. And she called me and she's like, Dad, we just left. What's going on? And I actually pulled it up and looked it up. And apparently they had an armed robbery at one of the restaurants at the mall that they were at. And actually it was the mall that we went to for dinner when you guys came out to Columbus.
Okay. Yeah.
And they had some type of armed robbery, and the police department got into a gunfight with the guys that were doing it, which is right by the theater. So they're shooting and everything, and the police were already there, but they said something like 16 shot. They heard 16 shots fired and all this other stuff, and police are all over the place trying to figure out what's going on. And so it happens to everyone. I'm thankful that she was with her boyfriend, and they're smart kids and they got out of there. So thankfully, along with all the other kids from church, but
praise God,
stuff like that seems to be happening more and more frequently. So, and it's scary. I'm like, okay, who do I, she's calling me and I'm like, all right, who do I need to go take care of? Cause you're calling me, and what do I need to do? But yeah, I may reach out to that officer, cause it would be interesting to have that story and see if maybe he would be a guest sometime on the broadcast. But
cool.
Anyhow, so we want to talk a little bit tonight on this broadcast about handling suspicious packages, and this kind of came up for dialogue in our conversation from folks that have asked, and then also just topics that we haven't chatted about in a while. And honestly, I can't think of a better individual to pull in than Mr. Jack Peters. And Jack's been on the broadcast before, and has an amazing heart for church safety and security, but has quite the background that's exciting, and he's pretty famous. So I'll bring him in here. And thanks again for joining us, Jack, and welcome.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you again.
Yeah, welcome back.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So I have a face for radio. That's what people tell me, but you're regularly on television. So I'll throw that out there that, we don't always have such a famous person in our midst to talk about such topics.
Well, what's ironic is I have a face for radio too, but I still get hired for television. I haven't figured out that yet, but I am an explosives specialist, and I get to do explosives on television. On Netflix, I'm on a show called Pirate Gold of Adak Island, and I'm also on History Channel right now for a show called Beyond Skinwalker Ranch.
You know what? That actually came up in my feed because I watch supernatural and paranormal stuff. I need to check that out. I'll have to get on there and watch that.
But wait, there's more. This fall, check me out on Discovery Channel on Mystery of Blind Frog Ranch, filmed up in Utah. You guys will enjoy that.
Nice. That's funny. Now I knew that you were doing, or you had done stuff in the past with Discovery,
Yeah.
but the History Channel and Netflix I had not heard with. But
Yeah.
you are the professional that comes in and makes sure that everyone else detonates things correctly.
I am. I do training for explosives and have for a number of years. And then I also take that role of doing television too, because actually explosives and other dangerous stuff for film has to be approved by someone's insurance company. So they want to kind of make sure everything is done in a professional and safe manner before, you know, you have big explosions and fire and that sort of thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
So in your spare time, you also, I know you teach online and you do your own private classes as well, which we had talked a little bit about before we started the broadcast. That I think it was almost a year ago now, but I took one of your classes online, which was a great great opportunity really to get behind what we normally see and kind of dig down in and see, okay, you know what I think and what we see in TV isn't maybe necessarily always the correct thing. So you did a fantastic job with obviously with that class and just kind of showing people what's true versus, you know, our perception and that sort of thing. So I did want to do a quick shout out for that. So if you are interested in learning more, if you're listening, you're interested in learning more, Jack definitely has those opportunities and at a very reasonable cost through his website to go out and learn more. And he's shared that with quite a few churches over the years too.
Thank you, James. Yeah, and we're going to start those classes back up at some point. My wife and I moved to Las Vegas, and we're working on trying to buy a house now. And a lot of our stuff, including my studio, is in a mini storage. So when we get set back up again, we'll offer those classes again. But the website is AmericanExplosivesGroup.com, and that has information about training and class dates and that sort of thing.
Awesome. So how did you, for our listeners that maybe didn't catch you last time, how did you get started in all of this?
By accident, you know, that's how it usually goes, right? I've been involved in speaking and training for a lot of years, involving leadership and teamwork and other various things. And then when the economy crashed in 08 and 09, all that business basically shut off. But the price of gold was jumping to almost $2,000 an ounce. And I had a friend of mine, if you guys like shooting, you'll know of Tannerite Explosives. Old Daniel Tanner's a friend of mine in Oregon, in my home state. And he says, I'll teach you explosives and you'll have a nice business if you want to teach others, because there's different agencies and mining companies and first responders and various agencies, and people need to learn. And there's not very many people that teach them. And so I started that back in 09. And he was right. I had a really nice business and still do that today. So that's why I got involved in it. We do a lot of commercial blasting for mining and demolition and construction, and got involved in training first responders like back in around 2014, and still at it. I'm working with a large blasting company here in Las Vegas and do safety and security for them as well.
Awesome. So what we can go ahead and jump straight into it. What would your recommendations be if say a church had, well, let's stay away from the weekend. So during the week, a lot of times packages arrive to churches and you know, they need to be aware. Obviously, they need to be aware of what's going on, what's coming in, what's leaving, that sort of thing. But just what would you recommend as far as things to notice, or maybe red flags to say, you know what, this isn't right. At what point should I maybe call the police department, or, you know, call 911 to get more help? What are some of the things that you might say to address that?
Sure. Well, and just kind of start that off. I mean, if something's going to get sent to like the U.S. Post Office, if it's over 13 ounces, it can't be put in the mailbox to you. It has to go through a clerk at the office where they have to physically, inspect it and mail it, with a human being instead of being dropped off somewhere. So that's just under £1, right? But there are a lot of packages that are much larger than that, like through Amazon, and especially over the last few years, people got used to online shopping, a lot of larger boxes that come in all the time. And that's not going to be unusual at all. I guess, if there's anything that doesn't look right, it may not be right, in the sense that look at the labels. Does it have a return label that looks legitimate? Is it addressed to someone that's legitimate instead of, like, say, just the church or just the business? To me, that would be suspicious without someone's name on it. Because if someone's name's on it, you can always say, hey, did you, order a package? Because we've got a box sitting out here. We don't know what it is. Then at least you can ask someone. But if it's generic address, then that would certainly be a concern. There's other concerns also, like if there's any oil or excessive tape or anything that could be considered an antenna or a wire or anything like that would be an obvious red flag, right? The oil situation is because there's a explosive substance that's used common called ammonium nitrate in fuel oil, where it's actually ammonium nitrate covered in diesel fuel, and that has an oily diesel smell and look. And so that's why anything oily is a red flag. And then obviously if there's anything like excessive tape or any kind of wires that could be possibly an antenna, something like that. I mean, essentially, if you think it doesn't look right, then that should, set off your internal alarm. And what I was going to suggest is, we all know what stoplight colors are, right? Like green, yellow, and red. Everyone knows what those mean. Use that system. It's very simple. Now, first responders will add a few more colors to that and have similar systems. We can just go really simple. If everything's good and you're at your baseline, you're green. But if you see something that doesn't look right and that's an anomaly, maybe now you're at yellow because it's got your attention, right? And then if you really got a problem, then that gets into the red zone. And I'll give you an example. One time many years ago, I worked at a jail, and we had an office that was accessible by the public, where the public could come up and ask questions to the jail to see who's in custody and that sort of thing. And there was one time where someone had left a big gulp cup on our shelf, and it was covered in duct tape. And I thought that was weird. Like, why would you do that, right? So it's like a big gulp cup there or something wouldn't be necessarily pique the interest into the yellow zone. It'd still be green. But this was covered in duct tape, and it looked weird. And I called the jail security, and I said, you guys got to take a look at this. And they're like, well, it's only a cup. Well, go have a look at it, and you tell me if it's just a cup or not. Now, a second time was a baby carriage. A woman came up and pushed the baby carriage up to the window. And I thought, well, that's odd. That now I'm in yellow. And I look in the baby carriage and there's no baby. So now I'm in red. And my life flashed in front of me just for that moment. So when things like that are weird, they're weird. And here's the thing with packages. And I don't want to scare everybody, but I'm going to scare you a little bit. If someone's going to make a bomb or a destructive device, there are so many different triggers that they have options for. There's no way that just you or me just going out there to go grab the mail is going to know how to disarm this thing if it is a bad package. So let me give you an example. There's mercury switches that are easily obtained. So if the box is moved, then the mercury switch activates the circuit and sets it off. There's also photocell switches, like, the switches that turn your lights on at night, right? So you can have a photosensor switch inside that box where you crack open the box and cut it open and open the lid to sunlight. It sets the switch off. Or there could be a number of other a cell phone, calling a cell phone to trigger it, a remote control alarm, a garage door opener alarm or switch, all kinds of different ways to set off a bomb if somebody really wanted to do that. So if it's suspicious at all, if you don't think the label looks right, or you call someone and say, are you expecting a package from, there's no a name on the return address, but it's from, wherever. Are you expecting a box like that? And maybe the minister says, no, that I know it's addressed to me, but I'm not expecting anything like that. And I don't know anybody in Fargo, South Dakota, right? Or wherever it's from. Then what you can do is you can call the police and call, they have a bomb squad. They have a tactical squad. And if it's a very small town that doesn't, then they can bring the state police in that will have resources to investigate bombs. And this is why this is important, because first of all, they love the training. The best training is a real mission, right? And if you call them and say, look, I've got a suspicious package, you're not bothering them, you're not upsetting them. On their end of the line, they're going, yay, we have something to do, right? And they can send their guys out because it's more interesting for them to investigate your suspicious package than for them to create their own suspicious package that they have to fake, right? So that's what it is. And it's a suspicious package until it's not. They have safe render procedures that they use where they can use high-tech and low-tech technology to take that package and investigate it so nobody gets hurt. Here's an example. Low-tech, they can bring a dog out and sniff that box, right? Or they can use high-tech. They can x-ray it. Or if it actually is something suspicious or like a backpack that's been left behind or something that actually looks like a bomb, they can send out a robot with a device that can shoot water or powder or something into the device to disrupt it, a bomb disruptor to tear apart the components so it can't explode. They have all those different things at their means to be able to disarm something. They can jam radio signals first. They can do all kinds of things so that bomb doesn't blow up. So having said that, let me scare you a little more. The state is in Oregon, and in Wilsonville, Oregon, it's a little town just north of Salem, Oregon. There was a bank, and there was a father-son biker gang sort of team that was one to rob this bank. And they called the bank and said, there's a bomb outside and we want money or we're going to set the bomb off. And they didn't really take the call seriously. We'll talk about calls next. They didn't really take the call seriously, but the bank manager goes out into the bushes and sure enough, they find a weird suspicious package in the bushes. He does the right thing. He calls the police. Police show up and they investigate this package and they agree that this package is a hoax. Okay, it's a hoax. They then take the package, bring it into the bank, and set it on the bank manager's desk where they're all having a chuckle over it or whatever, and the thing explodes. So it kills law enforcement people and 2 bankers. And they thought it was a hoax. And these people weren't stupid. They were veteran law enforcement, and they looked at this thing, and they made a decision in their mind that this was a hoax, and it wasn't. So the thing is with terrorism is everything is based on deception, right? Mm-hmm. The bomb looks like a hoax, but it's really not a hoax. Or they might say, yeah, there's a bomb here, but the real bomb is actually going to be maybe somewhere else. Maybe they want all the law enforcement to go to another place, and then the real bomb goes off somewhere else or something like that. Because when we're talking about bombs, when there's one, there's probably 2 or maybe even 3, right? And again, it's not a fun subject matter, and I don't want to make everybody paranoid, but I do want you to certainly think everything through, that when someone calls you, maybe it's a hoax, maybe it's not. If you find a suspicious package, maybe it's a hoax, maybe it's not. But I would challenge you to say that until you can prove that it's not a hoax, take it as something that's very, very viable right now.
We had, I'll say a quick illustration and then throw it over to Mike. We had a church not too long ago near ours that had, it was out in the out in a very rural area, and they had a package delivered on Sunday, which for us around Central Ohio, even the post office works on Sundays now. So trying to catch up and deliver those packages. So they went to the extent of calling the sheriff's office, which dispatched, like they had a bomb squad tied to the sheriff's office and whatnot for that county. And so they went all through it exactly like you said. Like they couldn't figure out, who sent it, what it was there for. There was no answer. And they thought it was odd. And the sheriff's office came out and they said, nope, they checked it. They're like, this is safe. That's fine. Everything's good. But what was interesting was they were apologetic. And of course the sheriff's office was like, no, we'd rather have you guys call us and have a team come out to do that training and to look for that stuff versus not at all. Yep. But for the rest of the churches in the area, when they heard about that, it kind of changed. It was like, hey, wait a second, we should be paying more attention to this. And for the church that I attended at the time, it's a large, middle to large size church in Central Ohio. There's stuff being delivered all the time and stuff being left at different places. So for example, something harmless, we would get like a fill-in UPS driver that would leave something on the front steps of the building and not know that nobody's going to see it on the front steps of the building. They're going to see it by the office door, which is around side of the building. And so on a Sunday, we would do perimeter sweeps and we walk around the building and we would see this box sitting there. And it's wrapped up. It's been sitting there. Maybe it's had weather, on it because it's not covered, but it's, so it meets all of that criteria that you were saying, where we were just like, okay, before anybody touches it or messes with it, we would double check. And oftentimes for us, one of the secretaries would always create a list and basically say, this is the package coming in. This is when to expect it, from all the pastors ordering Amazon and everything else. And so I would go to her and I would say, do can you account for this box that's sitting here? This is what it looks like. This is who it's addressed to. And, she'd check it off the list and she'd say, that's fine. Thanks for checking. That goes to so-and-so. And so that was kind of like a verification way for us to, add another layer in there and say, okay, maybe this, we should be doing things a little bit different, but at least we have something of a check and balance to make sure that it's not just a random box that's sitting there. But Mike, you wanted to jump in there too.
Yeah, a couple things I think going back with what you said there, Jack, is one, just calling out for churches, is everybody's volume of packages has gone up, not gone down. So I think because you mentioned the e-commerce piece, and it's super normal to see that Amazon truck everywhere and see boxes piling up at different points. I mean, heck, very rarely do even office supplies get bought in person anymore. They show up in the mail. And so everything's coming in, all the supplies, unless it's controlled chemicals or oxygen or other sorts of things that has to be physically delivered with a delivery guy. A lot of times you're just showing up on your doorstep. So another one, though, is, and something I've shared with a couple of teams, is not to give anybody a kind of the crime of opportunity. So if you have those Amazon boxes and you're discarding them, to actually collapse them. Don't just pile them at your curb or in a dumpster where somebody can walk up with potentially something that means no good, grab it out of your dumpster, which has a proper address on it, which has a proper return. It looks fully because it's an Amazon box, and all they got to do is fake the tape. And so it's fully around that. It's not a whole lot of planning that they would need to do to get a hold of a box if you're not collapsing it down. So that was a point that I've shared with some folks. And then really, yeah, if you come across a device or something, or a box of some sort you think might be a device, or you have some sort of suspicion, to me, I always make sure that immediately, yes, determine what your course of action is, gain that context, orient, and then decide and act, of course, but to sweep some of the other area too. Look for that secondary potential. Now, do you have more than one? Because if you have more than one suspicious bag or package, now that may increase the likelihood and give you context for that decision.
Absolutely. And if terrorists use the art of deception, it would make more sense for them to pull a box out of your dumpster or wherever else that already has the right labels on it, and they could repackage that and make it look legit and use that versus trying to come up with their own box from scratch or something like that. I would also say that when you're getting into the level of suspicious packages, that's just one part of the puzzle from a much bigger picture. What I ask you all to consider is that, you've got to have good communication. What is the best defense against these types of attacks is good intelligence. Maybe church leadership and management meets every week and they just talk about what's going on. Is there any threats? Is there any graffiti on the building? Is there anything that should be a level of concern that would bring that green light up to a yellow light? Like, a lot of these incidents come from people you already know. Like, here's an example. Maybe there's a woman that goes to the church and she's going through a divorce, and now she has a restraining order against her ex-husband or boyfriend or something, and he wants to take the kids. Now, that would certainly bring the level from green now to yellow, because now that's something to pay attention to. But what if he felt like the church took her side and is protecting her and the kids, and now there's a vengeance issue or who knows what? In other words, in that case, you're dealing with people that you know already. And that is often a factor there, where there's some relative that may go there, where there may be some interest in some type of revenge or violence or something like that. But I mean, it usually if you get a suspicious package, that's probably not the first contact from the bad guy.
Sure.
For example, over the weekend, there was a guy that was on film setting himself on fire, trying to set a church on fire in Florida, and he was pouring gasoline out and he set himself on fire and ran away. I doubt that was the first contact with that church. There could have been graffiti first. There could have been some sort of violent threat. There could have been him threatening maybe someone that goes to the church that he knows. All these pieces have to be put together in a puzzle. And a lot of times you don't do that, or you can't do that unless you talk to each other. So the minister's got to talk to the secretary, who's got to talk to the maintenance person, who talks to the person that gets the mail, who checks the messages on the machine. Everyone's got to communicate here to make it sense, because just the package alone doesn't mean anything. But if someone's threatening you, or threatening the church, or threatening someone that goes to your church, now you're in the yellow zone, right? Now you're looking at those packages extra carefully. You're listening to those voicemails extra carefully. You're watching the service and the parking lot and everything extra carefully, because you know that there may be some type of a situation that's brewing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned the communication piece. We had a church reach out to us, I think about 2 years ago, and they commented and said, "Hey, we just want to let you know there's an individual going to multiple churches in the area, and they are asking for money. And when the church says, no, we don't have any money to give you, but, we'll help you out. We'll do other things. We'll provide other things." The woman is getting irate and upset and angry, and she starts screaming and cursing at, whoever's dealing with them. And it was interesting because I got that phone call. So, like most situations, when something like that intelligence comes in, I would make it a point to talk to the pastors and talk to everybody that's there during the week, because I'm not there during the week. So I grabbed one of the pastors and I said, "Hey, I just want to give you a heads up. If you see this lady, here's what she looks like. Don't let her come in necessarily into the church, because, she's had some threatening behavior where law enforcement's been called and that sort of thing." And the pastor says to me, "Oh yeah, she came by about 2 weeks ago." And so I'm like, all right, so that, that's not helpful at all. I'm like, so we went 2 weeks and you didn't say anything to me. You didn't say, hey, this is what, because the same thing happened. Like, she came to the church. They said, no, we're not going to give you cash. We'll give you food. We'll help you however we can, but we don't give cash away anymore. And so she started saying, I'm going to bring down a revelation curse on, on your church and all this stuff, the stuff that was extremely threatening and kind of scary. And I said, I said to the pastor at the time, I said, wouldn't it have made a little bit of sense to kind of let me know, like fill me in, so that if she had decided to do something, additional, that I could have said, oh, well, let's be on the lookout for this, because like you said, she had already had one interaction. So, sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I think it slips people's mind with how busy, pastors usually are, and staff and everything else. But at the same time, it's stuff that, we really need to be focused on and paying attention to.
It makes all the difference in the world, because otherwise you're just guessing. And if there really is some sort of issue that would bring that green light baseline up to a yellow or even a red, everyone should know about it, even like a text string or something, with all the administration, the leadership team, the security guy, the maintenance guy, everybody's in that line of communication. And just, you need to say, look, if you know of some sort of threat, is there a bad, messy divorce going on, restraining order? Is there graffiti? Is there someone that is wearing a big jacket in the middle of summer, where they're concealing something? Or you're seeing someone that's carrying weapons that maybe doesn't look like they probably have a legit concealed weapon permit or something. Anything that looks out of the ordinary, they need to let everyone else know. And that goes the furthest way than anything, because then you're sharing internal intelligence. So if someone then sees something or sees somebody that looks suspicious, then they're like, oh yeah, that's the picture in the back room of the guy with the restraining order against one of our people that go here. Now I need to be aware of him, because he's apparently going to try to take the kids, or whatever the scenario is. But that goes a long ways. And the other thing is that criminals and bad guys like easy targets. And there's lots of examples of various active shooter events and bombing events where the bad guy went to one location and saw there was security, and they're like, no, we're going to go to a soft target. And that's why it's important for all your people in church, that the ushers, the greeters, everyone, just to get off their phones and pay attention and look around. If someone's coming in and they see they're being watched and someone's paying attention to them and greeting them and saying hi, they're less likely to do anything, because they know they're being seen and they're being watched. And I'll give you an example of that this morning. The church service already started. We have 2 services. The church service already started. I walk up to the front doors and I'm just looking outside. And the front parking spot just happens to be open for whatever reason. And a cool looking Jeep pulls in. And I'm looking at the Jeep. I've never seen it before. I've got a green light. The Jeep looks cool. I'm going to say hi to the guy if he's going to come in the church late. And a guy gets out of the Jeep and he's wearing a black T-shirt. And in big white letters, it says F-U-C-K, and the U's in the shape of a hand grenade. I'm like, that's classy. Now I'm paying attention to this guy. Now I'm up to yellow, right? Yellow light, because I'm looking at this guy. And he's got, and I'm like, we accept everybody at our church. We have all kinds of people that join our church, but I'm guessing he's probably not going to attend our church. And then he pulls out a tactical backpack, a black tactical backpack. And now I'm thinking, now that's really odd, because normally you don't bring a backpack to church, right? So now I'm bouncing on the up to the red light, wondering what he's going to do next. He looks at me, I look at him. He gets out of the Jeep with the backpack, and then he turns and he walks down the street. And I thought, well, that's odd. Did I just cause a diversion and make him, do something different than what he planned? And then I watched him, and he was actually going to a gym about a little block and a half away. And I thought, well, that makes sense. He's got a backpack for the gym. He looks like someone that would probably go to a gym. Maybe he's wearing a t-shirt that would be acceptable in a gym. And now, I kind of went back down to green because all the pieces made sense then. But until then, it looked like a concern, right? And it just being
it's a valid concern. Why would you park in front of the church if you're going to go down to the gym?
And I thought, well, maybe there's no parking spots. I actually walked down there and I said, is there parking down there? There's all kinds of open parking spots, which I thought, again, it didn't fit. So if something doesn't fit, that's an anomaly. And then you got to ask yourself, what are you going to do? Because you got to do something. It may just be watching it. It may be calling for someone else to help you or let them know what's going on. But you got to take some kind of action if something is that weird.
For sure. Mike, you wanted to jump in there?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of tell a quick story. I know we're starting to get closer to time here, but really more around not necessarily a mailed package, but more along the lines of unattended items left around the church. So one of the things that I did early on, because worship team will very often arrive to church much earlier than anybody else, sometimes even earlier than anybody on the security team actually is there, because they're doing early rehearsals. Now, we try to have somebody there as the first person all the time, but part of it is we don't want them to leave their bags, leave their purses, leave anything on the seats, or just set it down and go up on stage to do the rehearsal. So we have kind of our green room. We want everybody to be tucked in a cubby. So that standard spot, if you have something with you that's other than a musical instrument, it belongs in a cubby. If it's a musical instrument, it belongs in one of the corners of the side of the stage where it's kind of hidden from everybody else. So anything outside of that baseline, that established area that we've told people to put, becomes suspicious. And certainly we always sweep the building anytime we arrive on site and essentially for the day. And so we're walking the auditorium, we're walking through the hallways, we're checking each of the kids' classrooms before we open up any of those environments to, say, the general membership. And so we're walking through, et cetera, and we come across a bag. Well, it turns out somebody who actually was on the worship team ended up getting sick, left without her bag. So we're asking anybody and everybody, hey, is this your bag? Is this your bag? Is this your bag? Nobody was able to say, yes, it's mine. And nobody actually recognized it because it was a different bag. So we ran into that circumstance where we're now trying to understand, okay, where did this come from? Did anybody see it earlier? Has anybody, when's the first time somebody got here? Maybe this was here overnight or since the last time. So it's not something that was net introduced this morning. So we're looking at all that context as to what's there and then investigating further.
Absolutely. And that's a big issue. And one initial indication is that someone will see a backpack. They don't really think anything of it. And they go over and grab it to pick it up and they realize it's heavy. If it's heavy, it's a serious red flag. There's been examples of bombers, including the Olympic Stadium bombing and so forth, where they'll put steel plates in a backpack. And the idea is the steel plates will direct an explosive charge into a directional charge, like a claymore mine or something, where the explosive hits the back plate and then shoots maybe like shrapnel in a certain direction. And so if it's heavy, yeah, it could be packed full of textbooks, but why does someone need to bring that into your church, right?
Right.
So if it's heavy, that's a red flag. What you've got to do is make a perimeter then, especially if you see anything coming out of it. Obviously, if it's smoldering, like a fuse burning or an antenna, anything that could be antenna coming out of the top, or a cell phone on the top of it, or something that looks obvious. But on something like that, you got to clear the building and make a perimeter around it. It's also not a bad idea to put like a garbage can over the top of it, or something that can control shrapnel. Or maybe a steel garbage can over the top of it might be able to block radio signals if that's what sets it off. But you've got to basically get everyone out of there. And that may be not a comfortable thing because it might be in the middle of a service or a class or whatever. That's okay. You can deal with it later. If something's suspicious, really suspicious, and you're now up into that red level of a warning in your brain, then you've got to clear everyone out and then, again, bring in the bomb techs and let them figure it out. Because, again, they have robots and X-ray machines and dogs and all kinds of safe render safe render procedures they can use to determine if that's really dangerous or not.
For sure. We did something similar to what Mike was talking about. And we went one step further, and we actually created like carnival wristband tags that had the church's logo on it and the safety team's logo. And if we had a staff member bring in a backpack or something like that, we would actually tag it so that if they did, set it down or they were running around or something like that, at least the next safety person that came up and saw it would say, oh, okay, that's tagged. It's okay. The interesting piece, and then I'll throw it over to Mike, because I know you want to wrap up, but the interesting thing to me is we still have a amazing amount of churches that balk at the idea of doing a bag check or a bag sweep or any of that stuff. And, so that's probably one of the things. I mean, Mike and I have always talked about that and always said, the importance of being aware of what's being placed out and who's carrying stuff in, because exactly what you said, Jack, there's no reason for someone to bring in a chock full backpack unless one, maybe if they're homeless and that's all their stuff, they're bringing. I understand that, but even in that type of situation, there's ways that you can address that person and ask them, hey, could you leave your backpack out here? Or maybe we could put this in a locker for you to keep it safe. Something that's not directly there.
Like they're traveling, bringing luggage or something, have it check it into a safe area, have a look at it, check it into a safe area. It doesn't need to be left behind. It doesn't need to be in the main auditorium or wherever the most people are. It just doesn't need to be there. And just be aware of all that. And, churches are a big target of shooters and criminal activity. They are. Every week you'll see something in the news. So we got to not be naive. We got to be aware. We've got to be also in a situation where we can be self-sustaining in the sense that we can take care of security problems and medical problems, knowing it might take 14 to 20 minutes to get outside help coming in. We've got to be able to take care of our own.
For sure. Mike, do you want to go ahead and wrap up?
Yeah, I want to. So we've covered most of these, I think, in various order, but I kind of put it together as part of a training for my team, really 5 C's, and I'm kind of known on this show for putting repetition together as a way to remember things. But I got 5 C's that kind of covers some of what we covered tonight. So first one is context. Context matters. Has there been threats? Why might the item be there? Are there other things in close proximity? Are there people in close proximity to the item? Did they just set it down? Jack, you mentioned, is it an anomaly? Is something off? Number 2, contents. So you got to really understand in the big if. In certain circumstances, we may check a purse, a backpack, a guitar case, etc. if it doesn't rise to that level of, hey, call 911, and that's number 3. Call 911, communicate it clearly as to what you have on your hands so that they send the right response. Clear and control the area around it. If you've gone to that red, as Jack mentioned, if you've gotten to a point where you don't trust this item, and I love what you said there, Jack, about the put a basket over it or a trash can. That's a great thought. I've never have raised that before. And finally, after you've cleared that area, now you need to control the area. Make sure you don't have folks running back in for any number of reasons. Hey, I forgot my cell phone. Hey, I did this. Hey, I did that. You want to keep control of it. So those are the 5 C's that I talk about.
That's a great idea. We all have a 4K video camera and in our hands all the time, right? If you see something strange, get out your phone and start taking pictures and video. You can send me pictures, send the police pictures. That's something we should worry about. If you get a strange call, hit record. If you don't know where your voice recorder is on your phone, just hit the video button on your phone and that'll record audio and get that additional information. And that can go a long ways too.
For sure. Well, again, Jack, thank you so much for joining us. We have to Unfortunately, we have to cut it short because we only have an hour or thereabouts, but we always love having you on the show. It's good to hear from you.
Thank you. So much to cover. Let's chat again, shall we? Thank you, guys.
Great. Thanks, Chad.
Good. All right. So we will wrap stuff up, but if you just happen to join us, you can certainly pick up the rest of our conversation tomorrow, actually on all our podcast platforms. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, feel free to click like and subscribe, and you'll get notification of new content that we put out there. So other than that, if there's something that you would like us to chat about or talk about or do some research on, we're happy to do that and happy to help your church and your ministry. You can reach out to us through our website, which is churchsafetyguys.com, or through the Church Security app, which is on Google and iOS stores, free to download, and a great resource for you and your team to use. So until next time, I will say have a great week, and we will be back next week, same time, same place, different locations, at least for Mike. Mike will be back down in the oven of Texas.
Exactly. Yep. All right. Take care. God bless.
Have a good night.
Thank you for joining the Church Safety Guys broadcast, brought to you by Vigilant Impact. We hope that you found it informative, and we appreciate your feedback and interaction. Be sure to share our broadcast with your teams, join the discussion online, and connect with us on social media or at our website at churchsafetyguys.com. For other great ministry resources, download the Church Security app. Remember, keep a servant's heart, a mindset of ministry, and semper disciplina. Always be training. Have a blessed week.